Dubois Carter stood outside the luxury car dealership, the scorching sun beating down on his shoulders. Dressed in faded jeans and a worn-out jacket, he looked like any other middle-aged man just passing by. Inside, the staff smirked as they glanced at him through the glass doors. "Sir, you cannot stand here. Please wait outside," the young salesman scoffed, barely masking his amusement. Dubois' piercing blue eyes studied him for a moment before he simply nodded and stepped back. They had no idea that the man they had just dismissed was the owner of the entire dealership chain. Dubois Carter adjusted the cuff of his worn-out jacket as he stepped away from the dealership's glass doors. The salesman, a tall young man with slick-back hair, smirked as he turned back inside, shaking his head. Dubois could hear faint laughter from the staff behind the counter. A security guard standing near the entrance gave him a hard stare, shifting his stance as if preparing to escort him off the premises. Dubois exhaled slowly, his sharp blue eyes scanning the showroom through the glass. Gleaming luxury cars lined the floor, each one worth a small fortune. He had built this empire from the ground up, turning a single struggling dealership into one of the largest auto chains in the country. But today, he was just another customer. No one recognized him. No one bothered to ask his name. Instead, they had taken one look at his rough appearance and decided he was not worth their time. Dubois smiled to himself. This was exactly why he was here. Inside, the salesman who had dismissed him leaned against the front desk, laughing with two other employees. "Can you believe that guy? Looked like he walked straight out of a truck stop," he scoffed, shaking his head. The receptionist, a young woman with perfectly manicured nails, giggled. "Maybe he thought he could test drive a car. Imagine him in a Bentley," she said, rolling her eyes. Dubois took a step back, pretending to check his phone. He had seen enough. He had worked too hard to build a brand that promised excellent service to every customer, regardless of how they looked. And yet here they were, his own employees treating people like garbage just because they did not fit their idea of a real buyer. A sleek black SUV pulled into the lot, stopping just a few feet away from him. The door opened, and a sharply dressed man stepped out, adjusting his tie. Dubois' longtime assistant, Rocky, nodded as he approached. "Everything set?" Dubois asked, his voice calm. Rocky glanced toward the showroom. "Yes, they have no idea." Dubois smirked. "Good. Let's see how they handle what happens next." Rocky adjusted his tie and glanced toward the dealership's glass doors. Inside, the employees were still laughing, completely unaware of what was about to happen. Dubois took a deep breath, his expression unreadable. He had spent years building a business that valued customers above everything else, and yet here he was, standing outside his own dealership, treated like an inconvenience. The irony was almost amusing. A valet in a crisp uniform approached Rocky, assuming he was the potential buyer. "Welcome, sir. Are you here for a test drive?" he asked enthusiastically. Rocky barely spared him a glance. "No, not me," he replied, stepping aside to reveal Dubois. The valet's smile faded slightly as he took in Dubois' worn-out jacket and casual jeans. His posture shifted, and though he did not say anything outright, the hesitation in his voice was clear. "Oh, can I help you with something?" Dubois studied the young man for a moment. Unlike the others inside, this one was at least making an effort to be polite, even if his doubt was obvious. Dubois gave a small nod. "Just looking," he said simply. Before the valet could respond, the glass door swung open. The same salesman who had dismissed Dubois earlier strode out, his expression annoyed. "Sir, I told you to wait outside," he said, his voice laced with impatience. "If you are not here to buy a car, I am going to have to ask you to leave." Dubois raised an eyebrow but remained calm. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a key fob, casually tossing it in the air before catching it. The salesman's eyes flickered to it for a split second, confusion flashing across his face. Dubois smiled faintly. "And what if I am here to buy?" The salesman let out a short laugh, clearly not taking him seriously. Sir, with all due respect, we deal with serious buyers, not people who— A voice interrupted from behind. What is going on here? A middle-aged man in a tailored suit stepped forward, his sharp eyes moving between Dubois and the salesman. It was the dealership manager. The salesman straightened up instantly, the cockiness in his posture fading. Just handling a situation, sir. This gentleman was loitering outside, so I asked him to leave. The manager turned to Dubois, his expression carefully neutral. Sir, is there something we can help you with? Dubois' smirk did not fade. Actually, yes. I would like to speak with the owner. The manager hesitated, then forced a polite smile. I am afraid the owner is not available at the moment. Dubois tilted his head slightly, enjoying the moment. Oh, I think he is. The manager's smile faltered slightly, confusion flickering across his face. He glanced at the salesman, who shifted uncomfortably. Dubois remained calm, his fingers loosely gripping the key fob in his hand. The weight of the moment was beginning to settle over them, though they still had no idea just how deeply they had stepped into trouble. I am sorry, sir, but as I said, the owner is not available, the manager repeated, his tone carefully controlled. Dubois exhaled slowly, glancing toward Rocky, who remained silent, watching the exchange with mild amusement. Dubois turned back to the manager, his blue eyes unreadable. That is strange, he said, tilting his head slightly, because last time I checked, I own this dealership. The words hung in the air for a long, suffocating moment. The salesman's smirk disappeared instantly, his face draining of color. The receptionist who had been watching from inside sat up straight, her expression frozen in shock. The manager blinked as if trying to process what he had just heard. A nervous chuckle escaped him. That is not possible, he said, though his voice wavered. The owner is Mr. Carter. Dubois' lips curled into a small, knowing smile. That's right, he said quietly. Dubois Carter. That would be me. Silence. Absolute, stunned silence. The salesman took a step back, his hands slightly raised as if he had just realized he was standing on a cliff's edge. The manager swallowed hard, his face now several shades paler. Even the valet who had been standing to the side looked like he had stopped breathing. Dubois took a step forward, his movement slow and deliberate. So, let me ask you again, he said, his voice steady. What was that about me waiting outside? The salesman's mouth opened, but no words came out. The receptionist, now visibly panicked, quickly averted her gaze. The manager finally managed to compose himself, forcing a stiff smile. Mr. Carter, there must have been some misunderstanding. We had no idea. Dubois held up a hand, cutting him off. Number one, you did not bother to ask, he said. You just assumed because of how I looked. The air was thick with tension. The employees inside the showroom had stopped what they were doing, their eyes fixed on the unfolding scene. Dubois could feel the weight of their stares, but he was not here for theatrics. He was here to make things right. He glanced at Rocky, who gave a small nod. Dubois turned back to the manager. Gather everyone, he said, right now. The manager hesitated for a fraction of a second, then quickly nodded, rushing inside. Dubois stayed where he was, his expression unreadable as he watched the employees scramble. The same people who had dismissed him, ignored him, even laughed at him. Now they were the ones holding their breath. Rocky folded his arms. This should be interesting, he muttered under his breath. Dubois said nothing. He had spent years building this company with a vision of respect, integrity, and customer-first values. Today he was going to find out just how far it had strayed, and then he was going to fix it. The dealership was now eerily silent, the usual chatter of employees replaced by an uneasy tension. One by one, the staff gathered near the showroom floor, their expressions ranging from confusion to outright fear. The salesman who had dismissed Dubois stood stiffly at the back, his face pale. The receptionist clutched a clipboard so tightly her knuckles turned white. Even the manager, who had always carried himself with authority, looked nervous as he stood in front of Dubois, waiting for whatever was about to happen. Dubois took his time, letting the weight of the moment settle over them. He had built this dealership from the ground up, priding himself on a business that valued people above all else. And yet here he was, treated like an outsider in his own company. He stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "I want to ask a simple question," he said, his gaze sweeping across the room. "How do we treat our customers?" No one spoke. Some of the employees glanced at each other, unsure of how to respond. Dubois let the silence stretch before speaking again. "Respect. That was the foundation of this dealership when I started it. Every customer, whether they are here to buy or just looking, deserves respect." His voice hardened slightly. "But today I walked in here and I was judged, dismissed, laughed at." Several employees shifted uncomfortably, their eyes dropping to the floor. Dubois' gaze landed on the salesman. "You," he said, his voice sharp. "Tell me, why did you ask me to wait outside?" The salesman swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. "Sir, I did not know." "You did not know who I was," Dubois interrupted. "And that is the problem, because it should not matter who I am. Whether I was a billionaire or a man off the street, I should have been treated the same." The weight of his words settled over the room. Rocky, who had been standing off to the side, finally spoke. "The sad part is, this isn't just about one bad employee. This is about a culture that has been allowed to fester." The manager flinched. Dubois turned to him. "You are in charge of this dealership. Tell me, how often do your employees turn people away? How many potential customers have walked out of here because they were not taken seriously?" The manager opened his mouth, but Dubois held up a hand. "Do not bother," he said, "because I already know the answer." His voice dropped, quiet but powerful. "Too many." The room remained silent. Dubois exhaled slowly, shaking his head. "This is not the company I built," he said, "and it will not continue like this." A few employees looked at each other, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. The salesman looked like he wanted to disappear. Dubois turned to the manager. "Effective immediately, I am making changes, and that starts with accountability." The tension in the room grew thicker. Dubois' gaze swept across the employees one last time, and then he said the words that made the entire room freeze. "Some of you will not be working here by the end of the day." A cold wave of panic spread through the room. The employees stood motionless, their faces drained of color as Dubois' words echoed in their heads. Some of them glanced at each other, searching for reassurance that did not exist. The salesman who had dismissed Dubois earlier visibly swallowed, his hands gripping his belt as if that would keep him steady. The manager took a slow breath, his forehead glistening under the bright showroom lights. Dubois did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The authority in his tone was enough to make every person in the room hang on to his every word. "This is not just about me," Dubois continued, letting the silence stretch before speaking again. "This is about every customer who was ignored, every person who walked in here and was judged by their clothes, their car, or the way they spoke. And today you all made it clear that this is a culture, not a mistake." His eyes settled on the manager. "You let this happen. You let this become normal." The manager finally found his voice. "Mr. Carter, I had no idea." "That is exactly the problem," Dubois interrupted. "A leader who has no idea what happens in his own business is a leader who has already failed." The words hit like a hammer. The manager's jaw tightened, but he had no response. Dubois turned back to the rest of the staff. "Some of you might be thinking it was just one mistake. It was just one bad interaction. But tell me something. What if I had not been the owner? What if I had been a struggling single parent trying to get a car for work, or a veteran using their last savings for a down payment? Would you have treated them the same way? No one spoke. No one could. Rocky finally unfolded his arms, shaking his head. I have seen this happen too many times, he said. Good people get turned away because someone assumes they are not worth their time. Well, guess what? Those assumptions just cost some of you your jobs. The salesman visibly tensed. The receptionist's eyes darted toward the exit as if contemplating making a run for it. Dubois took another step forward. This dealership will no longer be run by people who treat customers like they are disposable, he said. We sell cars, but our real business is trust, and right now, that trust is broken. He exhaled, shaking his head slightly. Which means we start fresh. The manager opened his mouth, but Dubois' next words silenced him. You're fired. The room collectively inhaled. The manager's face went slack, his breath catching in his throat. Sir, please, I need leaders who do not wait until the owner walks in to do the right thing, Dubois said simply. You failed the people who walked through these doors, and you failed this company. The manager's lips parted as if searching for one last excuse, but there was nothing left to say. He took a slow step back, his head lowering in defeat. Dubois turned to the salesman. And you? The salesman straightened, panic flashing in his eyes. Sir, I swear I was just saving your energy for the real buyers, Dubois cut in. You're fired. The salesman let out a shaky breath, his shoulders sagging. Dubois turned to the rest of the employees. If you think I am done, he said, his voice cool and controlled, you are wrong. A heavy silence filled the showroom, thick with tension and the weight of what had just happened. The manager stood frozen, his face drained of color. The salesman who had dismissed Dubois barely moved, his hands clenched at his sides. Some employees shifted nervously, waiting for Dubois' next words. Their futures hung by a thread. Dubois scanned the room, his expression unreadable. I built this dealership on integrity, on respect, on the belief that every customer, no matter how they look, no matter what they wear, deserves to be treated with dignity. His voice was steady, controlled, yet powerful enough to make everyone hold their breath. He turned to the remaining employees, his sharp gaze locking onto them. I want every single one of you to ask yourself something. If I had not walked in today, would this have continued? Would you still be laughing at people like me? Would you still be turning customers away, assuming they are not worth your time? No one answered. The only sound was the distant hum of cars passing by outside. Dubois stepped forward, his presence commanding. Here is the reality. A business is not just a building, it is the people inside it. And right now I am looking at a business that has forgotten its values, that changes today. A low murmur spread through the employees. Some nodded hesitantly, realizing that things would never be the same again. Dubois exhaled slowly. I am not firing everyone, but let me be clear. This dealership will be different moving forward. If you cannot handle that, if you cannot treat every customer with the respect they deserve, then you should leave now. A long, tense pause followed. Then slowly a few employees lowered their heads and stepped toward the exit. Some hesitated, glancing at each other before making their decision. The salesman did not move at first, his face tight with regret. But when Dubois' gaze settled on him, he took a deep breath and walked toward the door. As the last of them left, Dubois turned back to the remaining employees. Their expressions were a mix of determination and uncertainty. This is a second chance, he said. Do not waste it. Rocky, standing off to the side, gave a small nod of approval. Looks like you just saved your company. Dubois glanced at the front doors where the former employees had disappeared. He did not feel satisfaction in their departure, just a quiet understanding that this was necessary. I didn't just save it, Dubois said, turning back to Rocky. I rebuilt it.